If you were alive in the 18th century and you told somebody from anywhere in the colonies that you were from South Carolina, they would immediately associate you with rice. That was your legacy for that region, and it was a legacy that they thought would never end. We have to remember that in the 18th century, people thought about things regionally and what they were familiar with. So if you were from New England, you wouldn't think of rice as something that was prominent at your dinner table and was there regularly. But in South Carolina, rice is something that was there for every single meal. This was the grain. This was your bread. This was the answer to filling stomachs and getting on to the next day. If I'm being completely honest with you, doing a video on rice from the Carolinas and celebrating this ingredient in this region is something that I've wanted to do for a really long time. It is personally one of my favorite areas of the country. But I haven't done that. I've been a little bit shy because it's impossible to talk about this subject without talking about slavery. It's a terrible thing, and I'm glad that we have since done away with it. But if I were to make a video on this subject and on this reason, and I'd skirt around that subject of slavery that is so difficult to talk about, then I would be doing you as the audience of the service and the people and the subject matter of the service that experience this. And the truth is that without the labor of slaves that worked against their will, this industry would not have existed, and this boom of commerce that eventually came because of rice in that time period would not have existed. There are discrepancies as to where the first rice came from that was planted in South Carolina. In the 18th century, it was understood to be Madagascar rice. Whether it was or wasn't, that is for another video and another debate, but that's what we're going with right now because that's what was understood. Now, that came in the late 17th century, and it didn't really start booming until about 1750, and it was just kind of growing along until that point. The earliest way of growing rice in the region of South Carolina in the 17th century was upland rice growing or providential rice growing, where it was only watered by rainwater. And it took some time for them to figure out that they can use the swampland around them as a beneficial way of growing rice. And so about the turn of the century until maybe 1750s, 1760s, they started using swampland growing processes where they were able to trap water in certain ways, and they were able to hold it where they wanted to in the rice fields. Now at the time, the rice grew so well in this region because of the natural landscape. This is called the low country. And so they used this swampy area to their benefit, and eventually it moves into Georgia. But at the beginning, this is very much a South Carolina thing. And so as they continued to grow it and refine their processes, they eventually learned that they could use the tidal waters, pushing the rivers in and pulling the rivers out twice a day to grow rice even better. And as they refined these processes, the industry boomed more and more. And what happens when an industry starts to boom? Well, supply and demand. You need more product, which means you need more laborers and income, more enslaved people to work the rice fields. In 1704, Parliament declared rice an enumerated product, part of the Enumeration Act within the Navigation Acts, which means that it had to be shipped first to England or another English colony before it could then be exported throughout Europe. So what that does then is it makes it extremely difficult on the farmers and the people that are shipping out the rice, because it's not like it's a product that travels well. So many different things can go wrong, and now it has to go through the ocean to England and then through the ocean again to where it is going to finally end up to be for sale at different ports. After petitioning and petitioning, South Carolina was able eventually in 1730 to get the Rice Act passed through Parliament, which made rice no longer an enumerated commodity, and they could ship from North Carolina and South Carolina to wherever in the world, especially in Europe, that the rice needed to be for its final destination. Some of the sources that I read said that about 1702, there was somewhere close to 250, 260,000 pounds of rice being exported. By 1772, over 60 million. In South Carolina, people are eating rice all across the social, political, and economical spectrum. So the lowest table, or even the people that are enslaved working these fields, this is what's on their table every single day, all the way up to the highest of high mansions in Charleston. As South Carolina rice continues to grow through the 18th century, especially the latter half, it becomes the third highest exported commodity from the colonies underneath wheat and tobacco. While all of this activity and this massive growth is very great for the colonies, what's happening globally now is that most of Europe is preferring South Carolina rice versus the Italian rice that they're used to getting. And so it's kind of making that economy go topsy-turvy. In 1787, Thomas Jefferson was in Europe and he was doing a bit of a tour where he writes a letter to William Drayton about the rice situation. In this letter, Jefferson is talking about the benefits that there might be in the Italian rice. And so he's trying to essentially smuggle some of that into the country so that people can try to grow it in South Carolina. Under this idea, I thought it would be well to furnish you with some of the Piedmont rice unhusked, what was told it was contrary to the laws of export in that form. I took such measures as I could, however, to have a quantity brought out, and lest these should fail, I brought myself a few pounds. As part of this, I have addressed to you by the way of London. A part comes from this letter, and I shall send another parcel by some other conveyance to prevent the danger of miscarriage. We want to make rice today. We want to make it exactly how it should have been made in the time period. And so we're using a recipe from Eliza Pinckney from 1756. And I have not made rice like this before, so we're going to give it a shot. To boil rice, take a pint of rice well picked and cleaned. Set it on a saucepan with a gallon of water and a handful of salt. When the water boils, put in the rice. About a quarter of an hour will boil it enough according to the quickness of the fire or the tasting it. But be sure to avoid stirring the rice after it is on the saucepan, for one turn with a spoon will spoil all. When 'tis tender, turn the rice into a sieve. When the water is quite drained off, return it to the same pot and let it stand near the fire for an hour or more to be kept hot. And if the process is well observed, it will be white, dry, and every grain separate. For this recipe, we're going to just go word for word exactly like she says. First thing we want to do is get a gallon of water on the fire and get that boiling. We're going to put a handful of salt in that and just let it sit. Then we're going to pour a pint of rice into that. The pint of rice goes into that and we do not touch it. No stirring at all, which is contrary to how I've always made rice. After about 15 minutes, we're going to remove that from the fire and pour it through a sieve. Now we're going to strain all the water off of that and then put that rice back into the very same pot that we used. We're going to set that close to the fire and we're going to let it sit for an hour or so while we're fixing other things. Now, if you want to rotate that pot so that it doesn't burn anywhere, that's what I'm going to do. Just make sure that there's no flame directly under your pot and go ahead and just turn it. So you can turn it every 10 minutes if you want to, just so that not all of the heat is on one side. We have our beautiful finished rice here, and it does look really wonderful. The grains are individual. It looks like it's going to taste really great. Now, what I want to do is just make up a couple of different ways where people would be enjoying this in the time period. You can find all sorts of rice dishes. There's rice bread. There are rice puddings. We've done like the Carolina Snowball on the channel. We've done all sorts of rice dishes, even the curry dishes. But some simple ways that people would be using this are just to take a little bit of ham or bacon and put it in a pan with some greens, wilt those greens, and then enjoy the rice with that. And also just a little bit of butter, maybe some sugar, and then you've got this buttered rice dish. And that is a meal all to itself. And then also it can upscale, but we want the rice to be the star here, so we're gonna keep it really simple. Every proper Charleston dinner table, there is a spoon that is peculiar to the town, of massive silver, about 15 inches long and broad in proportions. It is laid on the cloth with something of the reverential distinction that surrounds the mace in the House of Commons of Westminster. If you take away the rice spoon from the Charleston dinner table, the meal that follows is not really a meal. Rice continued to boom. It had its heyday. It made a complete culture in the southern part of the United States, and then it eventually tapered off, and the Civil War took it out with the abolishment of slavery. This rice looks incredible. I am so excited about how this video is coming together. I've got the butter and the sugar right here. We're gonna try that one first. Save this greens with the ham for the star of the show. I think it's gonna be fantastic. Let's give it a shot. South Carolina rice, done in an 18th century manner. How could you not just love to eat this? This is absolutely fantastic. This is breakfast. We're talking about rice being on the table for every meal. That's all you need. All right, so this is a really simple dish. We just took our rice, we cooked it exactly like we were supposed to. I put a dollop of that, we'll say, a bowl's worth, in the middle of the plate. And now we've got some wilted spinach and some ham cooked in a little bit of butter. We're gonna make sure to get a little bit of everything on the spoon, but the rice here needs to be the star because that's what we're excited about here. So let's try it out. I don't know what it is about this kind of simple food. A vegetable, a protein, and the best carb. It's just like, it comes together, and this feels like what you want to share with your family. This is so good.